Now Odin, Braxton, Alec. I'm just going to make a cup of coffee and I'm going to get into this tutorial. I've actually done it 2 times already this morning, and each time I had problems with this camera, so I ended up recording it, the whole thing, and then I found out that the camera just wasn't working most of the way through, so it was basically useless. So I'm going to do it a 3rd time, but this time I'm going to make a coffee first because I feel like a coffee after all that work. So I suppose the upside is that I've had a bit of practice now, and I've got a good clear idea of how it is I can get you from A to B in the easiest way possible. So I'm just going to go and pour this coffee, and that's it. Right, I'm going to close this, what I was doing before, okay? Delete. Okay. Alright, so with programming, what it is, the computer comes along and it reads the file from top to bottom, and every line on the file is a command to the computer to do something. I'm going to show you this just to start with. I'm going to right click on my desktop. You can do this anywhere you like, in your My Documents folder, whatever. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it test.txt. A TXT file, you would have seen this before. When I double click on it, it opens up in my text editor, which will be Notepad if you're on Windows. And in here I can just type something, anything. I'll say hello world. It says hello world. I'm going to hold down the control button and use my scroll up on my mouse, and that makes the text bigger. So now it's a test.txt file and it says hello world. Simple. If I close that and open it, it still says hello world. Okay? That's just a plain text file. Watch what happens when I now right click on it and rename it as a test.html. Okay, you would have seen an HTML file before. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language, but because it's the markup language of the hypertext, that's what's inside the file. That's why they've called it the HTML file. What it does is it says it's not just plain text, but this is hypertext because it's got headings and paragraphs and images, and so it's more than just a plain text file. But watch what happens when we double click it. Okay, when we double click it, it opens up now in Firefox, and depending on your computer, if you've got Google Chrome installed, or if you're on Windows it might be Microsoft Edge, or if you're using Mac it's probably Safari. There's just different kinds of browsers out there, but they all do the same thing. They all take an HTML file and they just render it according to what the instructions are inside of that file. So you can see that the hello world is now just showing up. Again, I zoomed in, so if I do the Control 0 resets the zoom level to 0, the default. So it's now unzoomed, and that's just the way that HTML file looks like if there's no styling inside of it. Okay, but it's different than a plain text file because your operating system opens it with the browser. So if you want to make changes to it, you can't make changes to it through the browser. You have to right click and open it with your text editor, which is Notepad if you're using Windows. So now I've opened it with my text editor. It's exactly the same as what it was before, but with an HTML file you need to use HTML tags. And if you've seen HTML tags before, you'll notice that they're all using those angle braces. So HTML like that. I'm going to zoom in using my control and zoom wheel. Okay. Now look what I've done here. I've written an HTML tag, okay, and I've written a closing HTML tag. Now most HTML tags, they need an opening and closing tag, okay? And the HTML tag itself is one that needs an opening and closing tag, and the reason for that is because everything inside of there needs to be contained within that tag. So I'm going to put the hello world inside of the HTML tag, make sure that there's nothing after that HTML tag, okay, just one empty line. And now when I save it and refresh, exactly the same, okay, but we're now working with valid HTML. One of the rules with an HTML file is that you need to have a head tag like that and a body tag. Now the head tag contains instructions for the browser Firefox, and the user never gets to see anything that's inside of the head tag. But everything for the user to see goes inside the body tag. So that's where I'm going to place the hello world. Okay, I'm just using Control X and Control V with my left hand. Control X is to cut and Control V to paste. And when I refresh, exactly the same. Okay, so now we have a valid HTML file. But I want it to be a much more interesting page than just saying simply hello world. I want it to have a heading, so I'm going to do an H1 tag. And the H1 tag is simply going to say that it's a greeting page. Okay, and after that I'm going to have a paragraph, and the paragraph is where the hello world is going to go. So if I save that, and I'll go back over here to Firefox and refresh, then you can see that there's a heading and a paragraph. And this is the proper way to use HTML, is to use the proper tags for structuring the body. So actually I would quite like it to be a bit more interesting than that. So I'm going to say that the body should have a style of having a background colour of red. I just like it to be more interesting than just a plain black and white page, you see. So the body's going to be red now, because I told the body to have a background colour of red, and the style attribute on the body tag, you see. And I mean, I don't like the whole page to be red like that, but I'd like the heading tag to have white text. So the style for the heading tag should have a colour white. Okay, and when I refresh that, well, now the title is white, and I think the paragraph needs to have a background colour of white. So I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to change it from, so there. And when I refresh, yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we're doing when we're working with HTML. We're just using the language to mark up the page. And that's why it's called hypertext markup language, because this is no longer plain text. We're looking at here, you can see it in the plain text editor, but when you're looking at in the browser, this isn't plain text, this is hypertext. Okay, so I'm going to now tidy up this page, because it's starting to look real messy. Like when I look at this, I go, oh man, this is like, it takes so much concentration. What's going on here? The style and the body tag, and it's not that easy to read, you see. So we structure the page using the head tag to put all the commands for the browser into the head tag. And the first thing I'm going to do there is I'm going to define some styles. So I define a style tag, and in there I'm going to put the style for my body, like that. And notice when we're using CSS, we're not using angle braces, we're using curly braces like this, you see. And that's where we say that the body needs to have this style. So I'm just going to drag it out of the style attribute. I'll delete that style attribute, because there's no point having it when it's empty. And now if I refresh the page, it's exactly the same as it is, no changes, because we're just simply telling the styles to be all defined at the top here. So I'm going to do the same now for the H1. Okay. The styles colour white, like that. Okay. And the P, the paragraph, it's also just going to drag that up there like that. Okay, and I'll delete them. Okay, so now we're back to the plain HTML that we had before. It's really nice and tidy. That's easy to read. I mean, if you opened up this page and you said, well, I'm going to understand what's going on here, you can see easily, all right, inside the body tag we've got an H1 and we've got a paragraph, easy peasy. And when you refresh, exactly the same. So if you want to know where the styles are coming from, you need to look at the style tag, and that's where you can change the style of the things. For instance, I don't like that this is sitting so close to the margin there. I want some space between the edge of that white box and the text. And to do that, I can go, I can tell the browser CSS to use padding of say 5 pixels. PX means pixels. You know what a pixel is, eh? When you look really close on the screen, you can see all those little dots, those are pixels. So I'm telling the browser I want 5 pixels of space between the left edge, the top edge, the bottom edge, and the right edge if the text was that long. That's what padding is, it's the space around on the inside of the box. Okay, so this is easy, eh? Easy, right? You can do all this by yourself. So far we've got HTML and CSS. What we need next is JavaScript. And to do that, to make it interesting, I'll say, instead of just saying hello world, I'm going to ask a question of the user. I'm going to say, how are you? Okay. And when I refresh, you'll see, how are you? Yep. I'm going to put another paragraph underneath there, and I'm going to say, fine, thank you. Okay. Yeah. So you follow that so far, right? We've got 2 paragraphs there now. And the first paragraph says, hello world, how are you? The second paragraph says, fine, thank you. Now, I want to change this when I click a button, because this is how we're going to show what JavaScript does. I'm going to make a button now. A button is another HTML element. There's quite a few different HTML elements, but I mean, it's not like the endless list. You just go and learn them. Like, there's probably only about 10 or 15 that you would ever use every day. So yeah, you just do some study and learn them. Inside the button, I'm going to say change my feelings. Okay, that's going to be the text that we see inside the button. Watch. See, there's a button that says change my feelings. When I click it, nothing happens. Nothing happens because we haven't told it to do anything on the click. So on click. Similar to how we had a style attribute here, now we're telling the browser that on click we want it to do something. I'm going to just going to show you this to start with, okay? I'm going to show you what the alert function does. Alert, alert fine. When I click on this, I'm going to get the alert button popping up, and all it says is fine, okay? It's really boring, but I'm going to show you what this is, okay? The alert function is the way that of telling the browser to show that pop-up, okay? And then the fine that we've put in there, that's just what we're telling the browser to show as the text inside of that pop-up. So what I could do is I could say way too hard, like that, because that's probably how you're feeling, right? Because I am actually rushing it. But if you watch it again, you'll probably understand the whole thing on the second time. But now what happens when I refresh it, when I click the button this time, the text has changed. It's still showing the alert because that's what the alert is. Whenever we do alert, it pops up like that, okay? And if you think it's way too hard, well, okay. Well, maybe it is just way too hard. Let's take that away. Okay, so it's an empty on click. When I click it, nothing happens because it's empty. Hey, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to put the JavaScript up here because it's going to be easier that way. So, just like we had a style tag in the head section, we have a script tag, and that's where the JavaScript goes. So in the script tag, I'm going to paste that, what I had there before, okay? It's just going to alert way too hard. It's going to show the alert pop up, and it's going to show that text inside of it. And this time it's going to happen when I reload the page. It's not going to happen after the click because we haven't tied it into the click. That makes sense, doesn't it? Does. Yes, because remember what I said before, the computer reads from top to bottom, and it's going to get down to this part in the code, and it's going to say, oh, I can see he wants to alert the user, and he wants to use that text inside the alert field. And it's just going to do that because it hasn't been told to do it after a click event or anything, okay? So watch, if I refresh, there's the alert function. Exactly what it was before, because the alert hasn't changed. Okay, that's it. So nothing happens still when I click the button. Now, I actually don't want to show an alert to the user when I click the button. What I want it to do is I wanted to change this text. Instead of saying fine, thank you, I wanted to say I'm very happy. And you know the reason why I'm very happy? Because I've got coffee. Coffee. Right, so how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, we need to make a function that reacts whenever that button is clicked. Okay, so we're going to type a new function in there, and it's going to be our own function. It's not going to be anything that JavaScript's got built in this time. Okay, so the new function is going to have an interesting name. It's going to be change my emotion. You can type any name that you like in there when you're creating a function. Actually, I'm just going to say change emotion. It makes it easier. And just like before with those round brackets, we're going to put that in here because it's a function. Like alert is a function, change emotion is going to be a function. We just have to tell the browser what to do when that function gets called. So the way to do that is we tell the browser that there's a new function called change emotion. Okay. This is how we define a new function. We can define any number of functions like this, and every time the browser sees the word function with a space, it's going to read the next part as being the name of the function. After that, you need to have some round brackets, and inside the round brackets you need to put any variables that you want to pass into the function. Okay, and you can see down here that we are actually passing this variable into the function, and the reason it's called a variable is because the value of it actually varies. It can change. So at the moment it says way too hard, but that's not the way that I'm feeling. I'm actually feeling very happy. So I'm going to change that to very happy. And of course in our change emotion function we want to be able to reference that variable, and we'll just simply call it my emotion. Like that. Okay. Now everything inside of these squiggly brackets is what's going to happen whenever that function gets called. So if we click the button once, it's going to do whatever we've put inside of here. What is it that we want to do inside of here? Maybe we just want to alert the user to my emotion. And just as a way of testing it to make sure that what we've done so far is working, let's run this script. Let's go back and refresh the browser, and what we should see is that when we click on the button, it's going to alert very happy. It's going to show an alert on the screen, and the alert's simply going to say very happy with the OK button. Watch. Click. Very happy. Okay, I'm very happy. That was easy, eh? With the my emotion variable, instead of alerting it on the screen, I want it to replace that text. Hey, that's what we want to do. We want to put that text in there. Okay, so instead of that, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to put an ID on this field. ID equals my emotion. Okay, well, I'm just going to call it emotion. So this paragraph now has an ID called emotion. This paragraph doesn't have an ID, and the heading doesn't have an ID, but every element on the page can have an ID if you want it to. But the only rule with an ID is there can only be one element on the page with that ID. That ID must be unique, and the reason for that is because if you've got more than one element on the page that has that ID, JavaScript just doesn't know which one you want, because there's only meant to be one element with that ID, you see. So what we can do now, inside the change emotion function, we can tell JavaScript to go in the document and get the element by ID. See, that's a function, and we're sending into that function the name of the ID that we want it to grab. See, if there was other elements on the page that had IDs, we might be using the ID of those elements. But so we're going to get the element that has the ID of emotion, and then we want the inner HTML we're going to set the inner HTML to be whatever my emotion is. So remember what I said, my emotion is a variable, and that's coming from down here when we call the change emotion function, we're telling change emotion that the my emotion variable should say very happy. It's got two words. Well, now we're going to use that, the my emotion variable, to push it inside of the element with the ID of emotion. So that means that these two words will now come in and replace that only after we press the button. Watch what happens. I'm going to save that, file save. I'm going to go over here to the browser and refresh. Nothing changed, but watch what happens when I click this button. Let me zoom in, control and scroll up, okay? Watch what happens when I click this button. It changed, and it now says very happy. Cool. Watch what happens when I click it again. See, doesn't matter how many times I click it now, because every time I click it, the button is telling JavaScript set the inner HTML to be whatever it is that we're sending them through here. So I'm going to say I'm very, very happy. See? And if I refresh, it says very, very happy. That's what a variable is. We haven't changed this. My emotion could be very, very happy, it could be very, very sad. It really doesn't make any difference to the function what the value of the variable is, because that's what a variable is. The value actually varies. Let me show you that. With another example. I'm going to copy that P, I'm going to give it emotion, an ID of emotion 2, so that now there's two elements on the page that have ID tags. But the first one is emotion, just like what we've got already. Now with the second one, I want to change my emotion first. I want to say that my emotion is very plus whatever my emotion was. So it's just simply going to put this word very, whatever's inside of these single quotes, so it says very with a comma and then a space, and it's going to attach it. That's what this little symbol does in JavaScript, okay? It joins two things together. Words, texts, it joins text together. So now we're going to end up with very, very happy on this one, but we're going to have very, very, very happy on the second one. Okay, ready to see? Emotion 1 and emotion 2. When I click on this, very, very happy, but this one's had the extra word joined on the front, you see? So this is how JavaScript works. Now, one more thing I want to show you in this lesson is the if and else statements, because I think once you've got that, you can play around. You can have a lot of fun with programming if you just know about variables and if and else statements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to just say happy. Emotion. Yep, happy. All right. No. Guess what's going to happen? Yep, you got it. All right. When I refresh, it says fine, thank you, fine, thank you. Then it says happy and it says very happy. Okay. What happens if I want to make this sad instead of happy? What's going to happen then? You know? It's going to say sad and very sad, right? Cool. There's nothing tricky about that. I want to show you the if and else statements. I want to show you that if my emotion is sad, then do whatever happened, then do everything inside of here, okay? Else, do everything inside of here. So this is going to happen whenever, if my emotion down here is sad, then it'll do this part. Otherwise, it'll do this part here. That's an if and else statement. Let's do an alert just to prove that, because it's easy. I use alerts all the time when I just want to prove that a piece of code works before I carry on developing and making it more fancy. I'm just going to go. I'm going to alert. I'm going to sorry that you are sad. Okay. Else, I'm going to go. If you aren't sad, then that's really good. God, then I'm happy for you. Okay, so you know what that's going to do, eh? If the emotion that we're passing in here is sad, then it's going to show an alert message on the screen that says sorry you're sad. Otherwise, it's going to show an alert on the screen that says if you aren't sad, then I'm happy for you. And if we refresh, we shouldn't actually see any changes. It should say exactly the same as before. But look, it says you aren't sad, then I'm happy for you. Why is it saying that though? Aren't we passing through sad in here? Yeah, we are. Up here, my emotion is sad, and we've proved it because we put it inside of the element by ID emotion. But if you know what happened next is we actually changed that variable. We changed it. We said it's now very, very sad. See? So I can prove that. I can say if my emotion is very sad, yeah, and now if I refresh and click the button, there. Now it says sorry you are sad, because our if statement is actually matching my emotion with very sad. It actually matches. So the value of my emotion is very sad, and that's why it tells us I'm sorry that you're sad. So that's what you have to remember with variables, is that they can change, and that's the whole purpose of a variable. I mean, for instance, the normal way that you would use a variable is you would have a field that the user can type in. Let's do that. Okay, I'm going to put an input field, and this is one of the examples of an HTML element that doesn't need a closing tag. Okay, the input field actually doesn't have anything inside of it. The input field is a text field where you can type your own text into it. So the input field needs to have a value, and it's that value that's what they're typing in. And if I just refresh, and you'll see what the input field looks like. See, that's the input field. I can type any value into this field. Okay, that's what it is. But we haven't actually done anything with it yet. In order to do something with it, we should give it an ID. Let's say that this input field is the user emotion. Okay, so it's the user emotion. Inside of our function up here, we can actually reference that. We can say document.getElement by ID user emotion, right? So now we can get the value of that, dot value. And with this line of code, now we're able to use the value that they've typed into that field. Let's just alert it. Let's just alert it so that we can see what is the value that they've typed. Alert. See, it's going to alert that value onto the screen. Watch what happens. I can type any value into this field. When I click on it, it's telling us, it's showing that value from there. I can type any value into this field. See? And if I change that, this field is my own value. Watch, it's changed. It now says this field has my own value. So that's how we can actually get the values out of a page and use them. So what's really cool now is that instead of alerting it, let's say my emotion is now going to be whatever that value is. Okay, should we just refresh that? Okay, this field has my own value, and when I click on that, it's now put it up there. And it doesn't matter what it is that we've passed in here, because we didn't do anything with it before we changed it. We actually overwrote that value with the value coming from the input field. So we actually don't even need to pass that in at all. Let's just go like that. Okay, so when we click on the button, it's just going to call that function. It's not going to pass in anything for my emotion, and then we're just going to set the my emotion to whatever it is in the input field that we defined down here. Watch. See? This field has my own value, and this field has my own value. Remember we did that before? Let's take that away now because it's just confusing. Like this. Okay. We're now just going to print that onto the page. Okay, this field has my own value. Change my fields. Okay. One more thing that I want to do is I want to say, go back to what we had before. If my emotion is sad, then it's going to say sorry that you are sad. Otherwise, it's going to say that it's happy for us. Yeah. So if I refresh, and if I click that, look, it's saying I'm sorry that you're sad. Yeah, and it says you're sad. Okay. What about if I say happy? Then it says if you aren't sad, then I'm happy for you. Can you see what we're doing here? This is JavaScript, okay? If you can get the hang of this and just learn like I have to be able to write this stuff and just do whatever you want with it, you know, you can basically do anything with JavaScript. Once you learn what are the names of the HTML tags, how do you grab them by ID? But it's that easy. Yeah. So my camera phone just ran out of space, which is just actually really good timing because I just got it finished on time. So that wraps us up for today, but I hope you enjoy that. I really hope you enjoy that. If you're the type of person that likes to just stick at it and conquer that computer, if there's ever a problem, it's always because the programmer was wrong. And that's what I like about computers. Have fun, guys.